All right, teachers and vendors, if you're in the room and staying in here, go ahead and log in. Let's see how your vendor knowledge compares to the teacher knowledge. All right, so we'll start in about 10 seconds. You got 10 seconds to get your cell phones out and log in. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. All right, so I think you can still get in. There's going to be a game where you collect gold or take gold from others. The most gold after 7 minutes wins. Good luck. Okay, so we're not going to play the whole 7 minutes, but how many of you guys have used Stukent before? Okay, so besides Stukent and Kahoots and GimKit, we want to talk about tech tools in the classroom and like what you can use to get your students engaged. So how many of you, the first thing when they walk in, you have some kind of game or activity, kind of a bell ringer? Okay, up. How many do it the last 5 minutes, kind of an exit ticket? Okay, how many do it in the middle, like as a break? So I was talking to a teacher yesterday, and he said, Karsten, what I've done now is I have a teaching day, and then a computer work day, and then a teaching day and a computer work day. And I said, oh, how's that working out for you? And he said, well, honestly, my attendance is a little bit lower on the computer work days. And I said, are you surprised by that, right? And so how you design your class, what games you have, what tech tools you have, is what we're going to talk a little bit about today. Using technology to teach financial literacy. So let's cut this off. We'll see who's in the lead at 4 minutes and 45 seconds, so we'll get 15 more seconds in. What is your favorite look-at game? What's your student's favorite look-at game? So there's all kinds of different ones, right? Okay, so just remember Dan was the leader. Okay. So, my name is Karsten Walker. I taught business and marketing, CTE. I went to Utah State University. A little bit about me, I retired from the Alpine School District after teaching 27 years. If I know some of you, it's usually from Utah FBLA or Utah DECA. I was pretty involved in those organizations. I spent 7 years in the Alpine School District CTE office, so I was half-time business and marketing and financial lit specialist and half-time teaching in the classroom. So I presented at Cherry Blossom, this institute in Washington, D.C., the NEFI Impact Summit, National Straight Charters Conference, and been involved in curriculum development. So we're going to talk today about the state mandate momentum as a trend, technology tools and gamification, online and dual credit, and even online options for financial lit, and then a little tech and AI. So first, I just wanted to start. Okay, a lot of us, when we teach financial literacy, we focus a lot on budgeting, saving versus spending. We focus a lot on credit, insurance, and the thing that's that my students get the most jazzed about when I taught was when I taught investing, right? And they get the Robinhood app or the Greenlight app or the Acorn app, and they want to own stock in their favorite companies, whether that's Nike or Adidas or whatever company it is, right? And so why this is important to me is that the top 1% of all the households in the United States, according to Fred, which if you're not using Fred, that's a really fun tech tool to use in your classroom. So Fred is the St. Louis Federal Reserve data graphing center. You can just pull up anything you want and make a graph to use that day for your bell ringer or exit ticket. But the top 1% of households in the United States own 54% of all the public stock, right? And to me, that's a problem. Whether we want to call that wealth inequality or income inequality or, the rich getting richer. And so on the right, you can see the growth of $100 by asset class. So I know I'm preaching to the choir, but this is why we need to go beyond spending versus saving, needs and wants, SMART goals, and we need to teach investing. Because then students can participate in the economy as owners, right, as shareholders. And it changes the world, not only when they vote civically for political people, but they vote in shareholder meetings for their values to be echoed across the companies and corporate values. So you can see cash, real estate, treasury bonds, gold, corporate bonds, and of course, stocks. So I was very passionate about the stock market game, and now the treasurer's game, right? So we all know money's a number one stress, can lead to relationship problems. There's financial infidelity when you kind of cheat with money on your partner. So what I usually do is I'll ask my students, have you ever bought something and hid it from your family? So I'll ask you guys, have you ever made a purchase and hid it from your family? So you bought fast food or Starbucks and you throw it away before you get home so that your kids or spouse don't see it, right? Anybody go shopping and put it in the trunk because when they get home, their family's there and they don't want to see them bringing in all the shopping bags? So we have this discussion, right, about financial infidelity and the stress that money can bring into relationships. And then it's just one of those things we're not supposed to talk about, right? So, as well as politics and religion so what are the trends? Well, Colorado just passed in May of this year a law, and so Colorado is now the 28th state that has mandated the semester standalone personal finance or financial literacy course. So Pennsylvania was the 25th, California was the 26th. Now Colorado is the 28th. So what this means is that more and more companies look around the room are going to get into this space and sell curriculum, right? Because of the total addressable market size, the amount of money we have for textbooks and curriculum, as more states mandate this, are going up. So what this means is banks and credit unions in your schools, near your schools, are getting hit up, right? They're getting hit up to donate or sponsor a curriculum for you to use. Now, do you have to use that curriculum? No, right? So just like quick quiz advance, anybody use everfi? Okay. How about Stukent? Right? What about PersonalFinanceLab is over there, or the treasurer's game, provider. Junior achievement, right? So there's all these curriculums by credit unions, by banks, by the Federal Reserve, which, like McGraw-Hill and these big textbook companies, right, Glencoe, they're getting into this space, right? So as a teacher, we need to be, I think, intentional about the curriculum and tools that we use, and how we're partnering with our banks and credit unions, and just be cognizant, right? Just think through that a little bit. So in 2018, Cole Kelly and I worked with John Dougal, the state auditor, and we did a survey of financial lit teachers. And this is a few years old, right? So back then, Stukent was called Real Classroom. But these were the tools that the teachers we surveyed in Utah told us they were using, right? So we can see Dave Ramsey, everfi, Federal Reserve, Finance in the Classroom that they mentioned, Knowledge at Wharton, NEFI, Next Year in Personal Finance, Real Order Classroom, now Stukent, the stock market game, now the Treasurer's game, University of Arizona. Who's used that one? University of Arizona, take charge stuff. UEN lesson plans, right? There's all this software and curriculum and tools. So what this means is that whether you're a family and consumer science teacher or a business teacher or marketing teacher, health PE teachers, coaches that are now teaching financial lit, social studies, you'll see them use and migrate to different tools that they are familiar with or they like. We'll talk a little bit about what is the state mandate. So just because Colorado just passed, became the 28th state, does that mean that every high school in Colorado will be teaching financial literacy? Since Utah's had our mandate since 2008, does that mean that every high school in Utah teaches financial literacy? So when we did that study in 2018, we found pretty good compliance. Somewhere between 80 and 85% of schools in Utah are teaching financial literacy. But that means around 15% were not teaching financial literacy. And that's because there's no carrot or stick. So there's no funding, right, really attached to it. There's nothing that happens if you don't teach it. And so when we pass these mandates, we're kind of just depending on the law-abiding part of people that want to follow rules, because a lot of them don't have attached funding, right? So even this most recent mandate in Colorado is an LEA, so local education agency controlled state. So that means that school districts kind of have more power than the state school board in Colorado. So each local school district has a lot of power compared to the state school board. So super interesting to think about, how do we get more and better financial literacy taught? So this is a little snapshot about how Utah implemented, and we've gone through several policy changes. You just saw the curriculum update. So what should be taught? So what I'd like to do just for a minute is a little think, pair, share. So if you're sitting by yourself, if you can move to a table where there's at least a partner, or partner up with somebody. And I want you to think, pair, share with people around you on one of these topics or something that you come up with. Should high school financial literacy or personal finance courses teach ESG, environmental, social governance, socially responsible investing, impact, or sustainable investing? Or actively picking stocks or passively investing in index funds? Or buying term life insurance and investing the difference, or some permanent insurance? Should we focus on building student and human social capital and their earning potential, or focus on budgeting, spending, and frugality, or some of both? Should we teach that we should just do behavioral nudges so we can guide people to the right choices, or should we teach individual responsibility? Should we focus on regulations and regulators and the legal issues, or not? So just get, or you can pick your own topic. So just get with a partner, let's take 2 minutes. And one of the things that we talked about in my classroom a lot was, what if we teach kids to make all this money and they're hurting the earth, right, by spending it all, or like contributing to global warming? Some of my students were very concerned that we're so focused on money. So like the session before us, what does success look like, right? So what are we doing in our classrooms? How are we teaching this? Are we teaching these topics or not? Discuss for 2 or 3 minutes and have a couple people share it out. Or pick your own topic. Yep. Do you guys ever use class debates? So you have your students debate a topic? How much math do you use in your personal finance classroom? Anybody that uses a lot of math? Okay, anybody that doesn't use a lot of math?
It's required for one semester. That's why when he said
All right, let's get a few brave people that are willing to volunteer what your Think Fair Share was like.
Our group talked about investing and giving students, directing them to resources to help them calculate interest instead of making them do all the calculations themselves.
I heard you guys talk about it. Come on.
Well, I just said that in some areas, I think it's a little more black and white, but I don't know that we can expect that all students are going to operate the same way in the future. So like the first example up there, I like to teach all of those approaches because some kids are really going to get into it and learn investing and go with one strategy, and others are just going to dump money in a 401k. And we want them to know what their options are, even if they're not going to go headstrong into one area.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else want to share out from their Think Fair Share? So, if you only use technology, right, you don't use the people in your classroom, you're just going to have a lot of students not come, right? If everything's on Canvas, right, if you miss your class and do the work on Canvas, then you have to do something interactive and fun to get people to come to school. So this was one of my favorite technology lessons / financial lessons. I talk about longevity risk, And I have the students go to this website called living100.com. And they do a 40-question quiz. And this is an algorithm for the largest centurion study ever conducted. So it's people that turn 100 years old. And they figured out kind of, some hints about how long people live based on this 40-question quiz. So like, for example, if you floss, then there's less bacteria in your mouth, and that affects your cardiac health quite a bit, your heart. And so it'll ask your students if they floss, and then that will figure in on how long they live. So then, how many of you guys have access to like Adobe in your classroom? Okay, so I have access to Adobe. So after they take the calculator, then we go to the Adobe Photoshop Smart Portrait features, and they take the facial age and drag it to the right until they get to the age that the quiz said that they would live to, right? And they get a picture of themselves as an older person. And you can do all kinds of hair thickness adjustments. Obviously, I didn't have to do that, but you can do all kinds of fun with that kind of stuff. And Instagram has an age filter now too. But so I tried to make research-based decisions when I was teaching, right? And so one of the research says that if a teenager thinks of themselves and pictures themselves as an older person, it activates pathways in the brain where they are more likely to want to save and invest and have money when they're older than if they never think of themselves as an older person. So this activity, this lesson with technology, right? So then what I do is they print out the picture of themselves as an older person, and we put it on a bulletin board, and everybody tries to guess everybody, right? And by the way, I've already taken all the teachers' pictures from the yearbook and aged them, right? So then they're trying to guess which teachers go to which photo and stuff like that. So it ends up students bringing their parents into my classroom to show them their picture of how they look when they're old. It ends up with students bringing students from other classes into my classroom to see if they can pick out, which picture is them. And it's just a really fun research-based technology lesson that I use the longevity risk of how long we're going to live with Adobe or Instagram, aging technology, and it's all research-based. So, does anybody have a favorite technology lesson or tool that I haven't mentioned so far? So like everfi, Stukent, PersonalFinanceLab, stock market game. Anybody else have a tool that they really, really love? Yes?
I really love the games on NGPF, their arcade.
Yes, the NGPF arcade, way fun. What do you use? Stacks?
We use stacks. They really like to do cat insanity when we talk about credit cards. They think it's just hilarious.
Yeah, cat insanity is fun. All right, anybody else use, how many of you have used the practical money skills, like the football or soccer? So that's really, if you haven't checked that out, that's a really fun game. So we'll kind of get more into those. All right, so research shows that gamification tends to work to get students a deeper knowledge, more sticky, more useful, knowledge they can apply. So this research was done by StockTrack, by the SMG, which is the Finra Foundation, and two professors out of Finland who in Finland's middle schools, they do a lot of economics and financial kind of software type games. So we kind of started out today with a booklet. My students would always really like the crypto hacking one or the phishing frenzy. Some of them really love the tower defense or the battle royale, right? So what some states have done is they've worked out a deal where they sponsor games, right? So this is Florida's Council on Economic Education. They have a budgeting game and a stock game, right? In Utah, we have the treasurer's game. So if you're not doing the treasurer's game you really should do the treasurer's game. One, it's free. Two, it lets your students compete against all the other school students in the state. Three, there's really cool prizes and a fun luncheon and dinner. And, it's fun when the parents come or principals come. All right, anybody use Google Classroom to like organize their class? Or is everybody in Canvas? Or some use both? So this is my buddy that teaches in Palm Beach County, Florida. We did our master's together at the University of Delaware. So I went to Delaware. Delaware has this really, really cool and inexpensive master's program. Back when I went, it was $3,500. It's a master's in economics and entrepreneurship education, MAEEE. So you go out to Delaware for 4 weeks, you come back and do a bunch of online coursework, you go back to Delaware for another 4 weeks in the summer, you do some more online coursework and you're done. It's basically a master's in financial literacy education, because instead of focusing a lot on economics and entrepreneurship, it went really deep in financial literacy. So one of my buddies that I went through that program with, he's the district director of financial literacy in the school district of Palm Beach County in Florida. They're one of the 50 biggest districts in the U.S. And they don't do Canvas, they do Google Classroom. All right, so how many of you guys use Kahoots? Okay, so if you want a bunch of pre-made Kahoots that you can just copy, it's MVHS Mr. Walker. So I taught at Mountain View High School in Orange. So it's MVHS Mr. with a capital M, small r, Walker. I think I have about 70 or 80 Kahoots that you can just copy, duplicate, revise, edit, whatever you want to do. Okay, so the research on simulation is pretty clear. I remember when I went to Utah State, one of the marketing education people I graduated with decided not to teach, and he started a company where he has a crane operator simulation company. So he teaches people to be longshoremen and load and unload containers from ships in ports. And they in his company, they need to do about I think it was 700 hours of simulation with the game before they go and like do it in real life. So whether you're learning how to operate a crane, do surgery, weld, driver's ed, helicopter or plane flight, simulation works. And at Utah State, they have a horse rodeo simulator device that they're like practicing in the ag school and stuff. So we can apply simulation in our financial literacy classroom. Whether that's the budgeting games of Bonsai, Stukent, PersonalFinanceLab, right? We can let kids practice in a safe space and simulate moving out, being on their own, paying bills, having a credit score, investing in the stock market, right? So here's one that has a free teacher test drive, the personal budgeting game, the stock market game. There's obviously the stock market game. So we mentioned next gen personal finance, right? Some of those games are really fun. So I want to talk a little bit about how to gamify your classroom and why you should think about doing this. So remember we talked about if you have everything online, there's no reason for students to come, right? And so if you gamify your classroom where there's going to be prizes or something happening every day, some kind of competition, I found it just gets students to buy in. So does anybody else gamify their classroom a lot? Okay, let's just kind of share how you do it. So I kind of made it a big deal. So in the treasure stock market game or before, I had like a podium. My Wiz teacher made a podium for second and third place. Every week we have the first, second, and third place kid in every class, and I made like this kind of necklace with like a candy bar, and I'd use like paydays or different like chocolate, right? And then we announced the top 3 winners, right? And And just little things like that really got the kids like, oh, how do I get to be top 3 or, you know, things like that. So let's have, anybody want to share how they gamify their classroom?
I don't know that I do anything that cool, but I do use a lot of simulations, and then I use, at the end of each unit, my students will play a game, whether that's from NGPF or something else, and then I do have them use the simulation for best brokers. I really like that app. It's free, and it matches what's happening in the real stock market, so it gives you a chance to talk about tariffs, if that's what happens, or COVID, or different things, and then I just keep the students' scores in Stukent pretty high, so.
Okay, thank you for sharing. So that tool was Best Brokers?
Yeah, that's perfect.
It's an app. Okay, cool. Anybody else use some apps or games? There's some really fun ones at Cashy, C-A-S-H-Y. There's a ton of really good ones. I'll show one called Troutwood here in a little bit that does some really cool data visualizations. All right. If you're not using this website for stock market games, I'm going to show you kind of the cheap website. You guys ready? Okay, so if you're not using finviz.com, your students aren't using a really cool tool to help them find stocks to invest in the stock market game. So what I would tell my students is go to finviz.com and look for these top gaining ones and then restart with those to research, right? And a lot of times the students that would win in my classroom would use this research tool, right? Okay, so this is a company called Troutwood, and they have this financial visualization platform. So it lets you put in your school or your state or your city, and then it shows every publicly traded company in these little dots. And it just has all kinds of really fun data. So if you have a student move from a different state, they can look up their previous state, or they want to move after high school to a different place. I think they can build a whole financial plan on this app. Again, it's up to your school district privacy policy and FERPA rules and all that kind of stuff. So just be careful of all that stuff. All right, so one trend besides all the state mandates and technology and AI is online or dual credit. So really quick by raising hands, how many of you guys offer your class for college credit? Okay. Do you have a straight college credit course different than the high school credit course, or are they intermixed? Okay. So does your college come visit you? Send university professors to come visit? Yeah? How's that been? So?
They just tried to get kids to be part of UVU Finance.
Okay, yeah, so the UVU Finance guys come and it's like a recruiting.
And he's one of our parents, so.
Okay. Anybody else have a different experience besides UVU? Okay, so I'll tell you a little hint. There is, every school that works with a college for dual credit, you have it's pretty cheap, right? 15 or 20 bucks for the kids to get the college credit. But the university and the state's reimbursing the university for some of that. Anyway, there's a fund. And if you are teaching concurrent enrollment, you can apply for grants to that fund. So if you want to take a field trip or you want to get one of these softwares and you don't have enough budget, you should talk to your principal about a concurrent enrollment grant, when they're due, what the application looks like. So I used to take my students from Mountain View up to the Salt Lake City Federal Reserve Bank, right, the branch of San Francisco, and we used to every November, like so they just get in all these $100 bills for Christmas because everybody spends more in cash around that time. And so we'd go down to the basement and there'd be these pallets of $100 bills, right? And the students just thought that was the coolest field trip. And how did I pay for that field trip? Because I didn't really have a budget. I got the concurrent enrollment grant, right? By teaching concurrent enrollment. So 88.89% of Utah high schools offer a dual credit or concurrent enrollment class. So make sure, to get signed up. Some universities or colleges want you to have a master's, some don't. But you can, sometimes they will say they want a master's, but you turn in your application and they just approve you anyway. So you might as well try to get concurrent enrollment. So what I'm seeing is a lot of recruiting. So this is Ithaca College in upstate New York, and they did a multi-region high school stock market game. But again, it was mainly to get people to go to that school, right? So if you have a good relationship with the business professor at UVU or Utah State, see if they'll host a multi-area high school finance day or competition or personal finance day. So we know in that study we did in 2018 that the students that are taking the GFL course for college credit appear to have better state test results. So 21,000 students were taking it for college credit. 50% of them, 50.1, were highly proficient, which is 80% or above, or 70% or above, right? And then no was 38.5. So now this is crazy, but in Iowa, the University of Northern Iowa, they went out and got a bunch of sponsors like we were talking about earlier, and they're funding their whole high school financial literacy dual credit. It's like a profit center for that university. They're making money by offering dual credit. So there's the UVU financial planning. All right, so if you do have your computers open, I have a ton of AI resources from this guy named Kurtz.ai. From making AI music to making AI images to making AI videos. So just go to that bit.ly. If you're not using AI to redo your lesson plans, maybe you should think about it, right? Like, so whatever lesson you gave last year on budgeting and now it's coming up for this year, just write a prompt to ChatGPT or your AI choice and say, assume you're an expert in high school financial literacy curriculum, analyze this lesson for strengths and weaknesses and student interactivity, gamification, and improve the lesson, make it better. And it spits out some pretty good ideas and some pretty good stuff. From icebreakers to whatever you tell it to, right? So if you're not, now, how many of your students are using AI in this class for homework and projects? Have you guys seen it? Yeah, so they're using it, right? So just really think that through. Here's where I think we need to be careful. With all of these companies selling software to our students, and if it's an app, right, that the students download on their phone, what are the privacy implications, right? So just think that through, be intentional about it, because data is the new oil, and I would hate for us to make our students download an app that is selling their tracking information, like where they're at, or how much they're spending. So just kind of think that through. You want to find a provider that has good data privacy, and all right, so here's what I see happening. Students in Utah, we're teaching a lot of financial lit, but we're not teaching enough. What I mean by that is, how many of you guys have checked out the online option that your district has, or the packet option? All right, so it's pretty easy. Does anybody know a student? So when I was teaching, I actually had a student who was in band and choir in some AP class, and he came to me and said, Mr. Walker, I can't take your class because I have band and choir in this AP class. So I'm doing it online, will you help me? And I said, okay, yeah, sure, if you get stuck, come see me or whatever. So then he comes in with his laptop, right? And so it gave me a chance to look through the online district version of my course, of our course, Financial Literacy. And most students can do it, no lie, in 2 weeks, right? Like an hour a day, 2 weeks later, they're done. Anybody else have like something like that in their district? Yeah, you want to talk about it?
I'm actually teaching the class right now.
All right, tell us about it.
And granted, we do have an online course that you can take. It takes a little bit longer than 2 weeks to get done though. I believe they revamped it or redid it just like a year or two ago, and it's broken down into 2 quarters. And so now you have to complete the first quarter first, then you have to go back to your counselor and enroll for the second quarter. But some of the questions that they ask it in, this is the first time I've taught it in a while. A lot of the questions and things that they have to go through in the tests require quite a bit of deep thinking. And so, I mean, I even had to go in and look up answers to questions. I'm like, there's a lot to this. There's lots of different branches of what, like just one of the ones I was just looking at earlier today. What do your taxes normally do for you? Name 2 things. And you have to go through and name 2 different things that your taxes do for you. And so they do do a lot to get the kids thinking.
Yeah.
Credit recovery is worse though.
Oh, the packets?
Yeah.
The credit recovery. So thanks for sharing. What I'm saying is that if we don't make our classes fun, or if we're not using tech tools that make it fun and engaging, using gamification, doing some social interactions, some field trips, getting a budget and spending it, the students are just going to go online or do credit recovery or summer school, and I see that as like a really growing trend. If we look at the numbers of what's happening in Utah, of students taking this class through teachers in the school or some other method, we're seeing some other method really spike up. So what is that? What can we draw? What's our takeaway from that? Yeah.
They just don't get the same learning out of some of the methods. It's really sad because they're kind of given them much more watered down.
So she said they don't get the same experience, kind of go watered down. And it is, but online is catching up, like what Sean was mentioning. Here's an example of an online course. It has like these fun little videos and online quizzes. Here's, I think, Business U is here, right, with Stukent. Again, another example, and they're not just doing financial lit, but they're doing social media marketing and business law, entrepreneurship, principles of management. Okay, so here's that app, Troutwood. Just be careful, right, with your school's privacy stuff. But the students can set up their financial plan for life. There's another one called Rapunzel, where they can start with $10,000 of fantasy stock and invest. There's that app called Cashy. So I want to talk briefly about the CTSOs. So anybody in here not a CTE teacher? So you're coming from health or some other subject. So I know we have a couple back there. Okay, a couple here. So I want to encourage you, if you are a CTE teacher with a CTE background, and now you're teaching all financial literacy or a lot of financial literacy, don't give up on FCCLA, skills, DECA, FBLA, right? If you can take 5 or 6 students from your financial lit class that have expressed like deep interest in financial literacy and get them on a team for DECA or FBLA or skills or HOSA or any of these things, almost every CTSO has a personal finance competition now. And if they don't, they're like developing it. So like even FFA, Future Farmers of America, is coming out with like farm financial management competition or something, right? So think that through a little bit. What I've found is when I get students working on projects in my financial literacy class that go with their CTSO, the learning is deeper, right? And it gets them ready for that competition at that state level. And then if they go to nationals and they do well at nationals, it just comes back and really builds the program, gets people excited. So hopefully the goal today was just talk about like everfi, Personal Finance Lab, Stukent. Hey, I went and visited Brent at UCAS. And Brent, will you just share how you use Stukent, like take role and like manage your class? Just 30 seconds.
I've been using Stukent for, well, before it was called something else. But each day the kids come in, I take roll on 2 different roles. Stukent for their attendance, and of course reading just, I don't know what else. I mean, we use it as a budget. You use it to teach a little bit about budgeting. I'm trying to think of something else. What else? I'm really stupid.
Do you give them money?
Do I give them money?
Yeah, it's in the game, you can like hand out
Well,
money.
yeah, I give them rewards for, trying to think.
Yeah.
If they are late, it costs them $100. If they're absent, it costs them $200. So that's something that they try to get there on time if they don't want to be late.
Yeah, you can use it as a tool to
Say, well, you're late to your job.
So we had someone using it as attendance and giving prizes. Someone used it as an award.
I can talk, I'm loud.
Yeah.
I actually, to get better interaction with my kids, I go to a lot of school activities. If they find me out in the real world and they take a selfie with me and send it to me, I will print it, and then there's this selfie wall, and they get $100 per picture. So some of them, that is their goal, but then it helps my relationships with students by doing that, and it's really fun.
So I just want to echo that these tech tools like Lookit and Kahoots, like if you're not using them as a teacher, Stukent, Personal Finance Lab, all the vendors that are here today like have Bonsai, they have some really fun things that students really like. And so it's just like selecting which tool to use when, right? And how often, and how to balance that is like the art of teaching. And here's the big reason why we should just really teach this better is there's spillover effects. So when your students go home, they're helping their parents with finances, especially like your immigrant students or new to the U.S. or new to English. Navigating finances is tough. There's and underbanked people, and if we can help our students, they'll help their parents, and we can just make this fun and engaging, and use gamification to help the competitive juices get the students engaged in learning. So I do have my Canvas courses in the Canvas Commons. It's a couple of years old now because I retired a couple of years ago. I just looked for Karsten Walker in the Canvas Commons. I have a bunch of PowerPoints, Kahoots, anything that I have, I'm happy to share. Just come find me and we'll connect. And then if you ever want to talk teacher retirement, I retired. So I started teaching in 95, 96, taught 26 years. Bought 4 because I self-managed my state URS 401k through the Schwab window. And I'm happy to talk about stuff too. So like when to retire. So I retired after May instead of at May. Because I wanted to retire in the new fiscal year after the 7 lane and raises went into impact. So anyway, if you want to talk personal finance, like teacher tricks on retirement, happy to do it. If you want to talk games or curriculum, happy to do it. You want to talk master's program or getting a master's in financial lit through the University of Arizona program that's new. Just come find me. Thanks for coming and attending. And I'll make sure this PowerPoint's available to everybody. So thanks a lot.